The theme of today is stop sabotaging your small business growth. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. My name is Patricia Rattray. I've been an entrepreneur for 21 years. I built a real estate business and I'm a top producer and I serve Fairfield County. And I also started a small business consultancy about 6 years ago. We do consulting and project management for locally driven businesses. Some of the things we focus on are operations, marketing and sales and partnerships. And I work with a team of very well curated business experts and other consultants as well. We work in the growth phase of a business. So after you're revenue generating, we go in, we help you build your strategy, and then we prioritize your projects. And then unlike most consultants, we actually help you execute those projects, and we consult young professionals and new employees, and we coach them along the way. So it's kind of a hands-on consulting. These are some of the projects that we do: business process improvement, strategic plans, financial reporting, coaching, capacity building, project management. And then with partnerships, we actually explore all types of partnerships. It could be social mission, event partnerships, sourcing partnerships, community partnerships, and complementary business partnerships. So the ground rules for today is to stay engaged, silence your electronic devices, and feel free to interrupt with questions. I kind of like this stuff to be interactive, and we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So the objective for today is to really explore some of the ways that we get stuck when your business is up and running, right? As I said, we're talking about the growth phase. For those of you who aren't really clear about the phases of a business, this is kind of what it looks like. And I actually like it in a circle because you're always kind of revisiting things that you visited already from the past when you're building a business. So in the early stage, you are in startup mode, right? You're just bringing the product to market. In that phase, the founders are doing most of the work, and you're really just seeing what would fly. There's a lot of reiteration and pivoting, and you're kind of developing your proof of concept and your MVP, right? The most viable product. Growth phase is really your survival phase. Now, about 80%, well, actually, let's see, I think it's about 50% don't make it past that first year. And then another 50% don't make it past the growth survival. And there are all kinds of percentages, but the rate of failure is high, right? For getting through startup phase and growth phase. In growth phase, you're really focused on building your operations, right? And you start to hire people, revenue starts coming in, and that's where you start to have some real challenges, right? You understand that your product is valuable in the marketplace, but now you have to build a business around that product. Right, so that's the part that we focus on, okay? And then after that, you go to the success phase where your revenue is predictable, you have some controls on your expenses, you have repeatable processes and systems in place, right? And you're in your success mode. Takeoff mode is really when you're ready to scale a little bit, maybe open up a new location or launch a new product line, and you have the cash to do it. And then you get to maturity where you're either going to be bought, you're going to buy another company, or you're just going to pivot again and innovate because market factors are changing, industries are changing and shifting. Okay, so I can't cover today all the obstacles to growth. Okay, there are like a million, but a lot of them have to do with habits that business owners have and business managers have. And early stage companies have, and it's hard for them to shift. After that initial startup phase, you've invested so much time and energy in everything you're doing. It's very difficult now to revisit everything and kind of redo it, right? Because now you have to redo it with the mindset that you have all this feedback from current customers. You've already exploited your sphere of influence, right? Those are kind of like the easy sales, right? People you know and your friends and people in your industry or people from your past. And so now you have to kind of revisit everything to see if it's gonna be sustainable. Okay, so we're gonna talk about four ways that I see small business get sabotaged. The invisible strategy is number one. Operations design for operations is number two. Assumptive training is number three, and old school marketing is number four. And as I said, there are many others. So what do we mean by invisible strategy? Well, just what it means. The strategy is invisible. Now, it can be invisible because it doesn't exist. It could be invisible because it's too broad. It could be invisible because people ignore it, right? Strategy seems to be a daunting word for a lot of people. And strategy is something that we have made fun of for years, okay? In corporate environments, I don't know how many of you came from a corporate environment? Okay, so you've probably heard of these strategy jokes, right? And this one I love. Now, if you turn to page 136, that's when things really start to get interesting, right? So you think of strategy as these piles of paper, every department, has their objectives and their goals. And then next thing you know, it's just so daunting. It's like hidden in a drawer, okay? Or it's visible among executives, right? Upper management, right? And nobody has any idea what the strategy is, right? Another kind of humorous cartoon here is, so business as usual, right? The new way, and then at the end you have the old way, and in the middle you have ignore, circumvent, and sabotage, right? So strategy is often invisible because people intentionally do not want to change, right? So they're just going to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, and there's no one really around to notice or keep people accountable, okay? Now, strategy is essential for a small business, but what strategy looks like in a small business is not the same as a big business, okay? And that's why we specifically focus on small businesses, because all parts of the operation are much more integrated in a small business. So the main problems with strategy is, one, it's in a drawer, no one's seeing it, right? Even with a small business, I've gone into 6-person businesses, and the only person aware of the strategy are the 2 founders, okay? Strategy stops at the plan for Google Ads, right? Everyone knows we need a strategy for Google Ads. And sometimes you might have a strategy for marketing, but you don't have a strategy for business development. You don't have a real strategy for leveraging operations, right? Other parts of the organization. You might have a strategy for just lead generation, right? But you don't have a strategy for sales. I've seen strategy is in the hands of a social media or email marketing person, right? You just kind of say, well, she's good at marketing. She might have 3 or 4 years of experience in social media, and you kind of ask that person to build your strategy. Okay, that just never works, and we'll talk a little bit about why. And then strategy is not a carefully developed actionable plan. So what I teach my business owners is strategy is a carefully developed detailed plan with a set of tools and resources attached to it, okay? So if you don't have a set of tools and resource attached to it, it's not a strategy. It should be visible and available to the entire team, okay? And then the other kind of, very important point to note is strategy is an operations function. It is not a marketing function. It's not a sales function, okay? Now that seems a little strange, right? How can my marketing strategy be an operations function, okay? For a small business, it is. Because with a small business, you have to build the tools, and the tools are intimately related with operations. It's intimately connected. So you have to build the tools to market and do sales separately from the person executing that plan. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go on. But this is how I want you to view strategy. It's a toolbox with instructions. If it doesn't feel like that in your organization, then it's not a strategy. So an example of like a marketing strategy toolbox, just to kind of help you wrap your head around this is my toolbox for marketing strategy, okay? And this is what I build in every company that's visible to every part of the other company, right? Your company description, your audience descriptions, your product descriptions, right? These are tools. They should not be in some old business plan somewhere, because if you wrote it for your initial startup phase, all of this has changed by the time you get to growth stage, okay? So you want to take it out and break all these pieces up so that they're easily accessible to everyone. And you might say, well, why does my operations person need to know my hooks and offers? Because every single tool in this toolbox has an operations component, okay? Same thing with every part of the organization. Like if you're looking at your hooks, your CTAs, your urgency triggers, your social proof, all of that has an operations component, has a business development component, has a financial component. So think of strategy as, you have an objective, how are you going to get there? Well, we're going to need all these tools, and then we're going to need instructions to leverage those tools, okay? So let's move on from strategy to operations design for operations. So I generally walk into a business and I see that they have operations. Now, again, we're talking about growth phase. So in startup phase, your operations must work, right? That's literally the bar, right? Like how do we just get the process to work? And you're just obsessed with it, right? You don't want any hiccups. You don't want any problems with the user experience. The website has to work, the product has to work, and that's all you're focused on, okay? In growth phase, your operations must start to wow, okay? So it's not enough anymore for things to just work, okay? A perfect example of this is the microbrewery industry, right? We all remember this industry was at the forefront of marketing your operations, okay? So people who, love craft beer started to just love more than the beer, right? They love the whole experience. They love looking at how the sausage is made, right? And then other industries started following that, right? So now if you go down to Brooklyn, in Industry City, right, what do you see? You see how the tea is made. You see how the bicycles are made, right? And so the operations is now something you can market, right? And it's the same thing the other way around, right? Operations can also sell, right? So you want to market your operations, but you also want your operations team, right, to always be selling, okay? So this goes way beyond. I mean, in a big company, you can get away with the operations people having no salespeople, having no sales training, right? And not really understanding conversions. But with a small business, it just doesn't work, right? Because everyone is so close to that customer. So operations people do need to know how they position and design operations to sell, okay? So what are we doing in growth phase? Now we have to go back and revisit everything we've already built, right? This, for some people, this isn't fun. It's very fun for me. But operations can no longer be just for operations. And some pushback I get on this is, well, I'm not a salesperson, okay? So what I do is I change the word sales to share, okay? And it's been very effective. So you're not selling, operations people, you're sharing agreement with your customers that you can deliver something of value and benefit to that person, right? You're sharing something of value that could help a target prospect understand or address a need or problem, right? So if you think of it that way, you can bring your operations people along to consider themselves sales people, okay? They're sharing the keys to a benefit that you can provide. So the third way people get stuck is assumptive training, okay? And again, I see this, so this is more, most of this stuff is just so relevant to a smaller business and might not be as relevant to a larger business. We assume that people know how to do basic daily things every single day, right? We assume people know how to answer the phone. We assume people know how to respond to an email. We assume people know how to greet someone at the door, right? For most small businesses, that has to be strategic. Every little small thing has to be planned, okay? So, and why is this, okay? Well, we all see a different blue, and we all have that experience when you're a kid and you're looking at something and you say, look at that blue shirt, and someone says, well, no, that's a green shirt, right? We all perceive things slightly differently, right? We all have different perspectives that we bring to the table. So even something very simple, a very simple instruction, people can often misinterpret, right? So I love this quote. It definitely kind of speaks to what I'm saying. So he said, don't you feel lonely living in your own little world? And she whispered, don't you feel powerless living in other people's worlds, right? So it just shows how different we can come to the table, like how different our perspectives can be when we're looking at anything. So we need to train. Well, I mean, the first thing we need to do is not assume, right, when we're training. And then we need to train the trainer. I see in a lot of small businesses that people expect people to magically know how to train, right? Just because someone knows how to do something doesn't mean they know how to train, right? So you have to train people in best practices, okay? There is an acronym well, I love this quote here. You don't learn to walk by following rules, you learn by doing and by falling over, right? So this speaks to a key principle of training that most people miss, okay? We're gonna talk about the acronym and what part of the training that they miss. There's an acronym called PSOS. I thought I had that slide here, okay. And it's prepare, explain, show, observe, and supervise, right? So most people, when they train, they prepare, then they explain, then they show, and they stop it at there. They stop it right there, right? The last parts are you're supposed to observe, have the person do it and observe them, and then give them feedback, and then plan a schedule for a next round of feedback and a next round of feedback, right? Like follow up, right? To keep them accountable and on track, right? So, so this could really sabotage you, right? The more employees you bring in, the more people you bring on for, typical startup phase roles, the more you're going to have to invest in training. And a lot of times there is no budget whatsoever for training, right? People just underestimate the time it takes and they underestimate the cost it takes, okay? So managers need training. Here, I just threw this in because it's just a big problem, right? 50% of employees leave because they want to get away from their manager. So if you're wondering why you can't retain employees, it might not be that lower salary. It might be the whole training process. Oh, here's the acronym. There we go, PSOS. Okay. And then another thing about training is customers also need training, okay? We tend to assume that people understand our product, they understand why they need the product, but the number one reason why people leave, switch brands, is because they don't feel the communication from the, from the business is adequate, okay? So we also have to invest in educating that customer. And this is really good for the sales process because a lot of times people don't know why they need your product. And I find salespeople sabotage themselves when people raise early objections in the sales cycle and they don't really understand that that person just needs more education to really know they want your product, right? So just because someone says, I don't need your product, doesn't mean they don't need your product, right? You really won't know how they view your product, right? Until you start that education process, right? So training is really something you have to invest in. And the fourth way people sabotage themselves is by sticking with old school marketing. Now, this is just rampant, right? During your startup phase, you're marketing your product, right? Everything's about your product. You're still trying to define it, right? And you're still trying to mold it and shape it, right? And so I understand why all the marketing is about the product. But we have to shift our mindset as we move into growth phase, okay? So the first thing we have to do is realize that marketing is not the same as sales, okay? In the beginning, it kind of is the same because you're probably not going to have a marketing person and a salesperson, right? So you just kind of like mush it all together. Marketing is about lead generation and nurturing. And in growth phase, you really have to start splitting it up and actually have a sales team, okay? So sales is about conversion. And conversion can come from a variety of different things, not just lead generation, right? You can convert current clients, right? And upsell current clients and offer them a new product. And you can also convert referral partners, okay? Your method for converting current clients and for nurturing and converting referral partners looks nothing like the strategy to sell the products, right? The strategy to do like digital lead generation, right? They're completely different processes, right? So at some point you have to sit down and start splitting this stuff up. And what are they all going to have? They're all going to have their own little toolbox, right? They won't have the same toolbox. They won't have the same call to actions. They won't have the same brochures, right? They, if you're looking to a referral partner, you're going to have a different lead behind. You're going to have a different email script. You're going to have a different sales script, right? So making the time to sit down and kind of recreate these tools. Again, people have, they run out of bandwidth, right? Companies run out of bandwidth, but this has to be done during growth phase. Otherwise, you don't have the tools to support the growth, right? So old school marketing also does not tell a story. In startup phase, again, you're so product focused, you're not developing that, professional video about the owner journey, right? To tell the story, right? You don't have that whatever, $5,000 to do that brand video. Well, now you have to do it. Now you have to tell your story, and not just the story of the company, right? You're going to tell the story of the founder, the story of the company. You're going to tell the story of your industry. You're going to tell the story of your community, right? Because now you're reaching beyond your sphere of influence. You have to bring in other people, and you have to start moving towards being a subject matter expert at things beyond your product. Okay, so the storytelling really comes into play here, and a lot of times you're still in product focus mode, and in order to attract more people and build those partnerships, you have to move to storytelling mode. Another feature of old school marketing is the person executing on the marketing plan is developing the strategy and content. Now, we've talked about this before. By growth phase, this usually is not going to work, okay? And you might not have a ton of money to hire a full-time strategy person, but that's where consultants come in. It's much easier to just hire a consultant to do the strategy. And what's really cost effective is to take that young professional who maybe has 3 to 4 years of marketing experience, plug that person into the strategy, but you can't expect that person to build a strategy, okay? And then businesses also get stuck with messages that are product and service focused versus consumer and benefits focused. So that I'm gonna show you some examples of that. And that creates missed opportunities, right? To really be a subject matter expert on the benefits you're offering the client versus a subject matter expert on the product you're offering the client. So I really wanna just make it clear what benefits focused content is, okay? So it's not content that says, 50% off, this car, right? Or, 10% off this membership. That's not benefits focused content, right? Because that's talking about the membership and the product. It's content that focuses on what does the product do for the customer, right? It solves a problem, it creates an opportunity, it offers clear results, it shows that you understand the customer, it sells experiences, not products and programs. It shares your process, right? That shares your operations and how you work with the person or the customer, and it integrates customer feedback. So these are some really good examples I found online. That website, Sokio, it's like an Australian marketing company. They did a really great job of curating some examples of this. And so here is an example of how Google Photos solves a problem. What's the problem? Keeping unlimited memories, right? You don't want to lose your memories. So we're making sure you can keep them, right? So that just really hits home, right? It's very emotionally charged. Here's an example of creating an opportunity, right? Earn $1,384 a month hosting your home in Cambridge, right? So this is like an Airbnb company, right? So you're basically giving the customer an opportunity to do something. This one shows clear results. This is about a climate modeling company, and they're just, telling you, look what we've done, right? We've created jobs and we've lowered carbon emissions. We've created 7 million low carbon jobs, and we avoided 700,000 premature deaths, right? So you're giving numbers and real solutions. This one is about understanding the customer problem. With insights like channel-based attribution and response time tracking, you'll be reaching over 2019 social goals quickly. You'll be reaching your 2019 social goals quickly with Hootsuite. So what this one is saying, it's funny, with this, if you're not a marketing person, you might not understand what they're talking about. But that's strategic, right? They're showing that we know what marketing people are worried about, right? And so you're going to notice that they're an expert in this field, right? By them using that language, right? Insider language. So I would read it and go, wow, they really understand what I'm dealing with. And then this last example is about selling the experience. So I love this one from National Trust. Bursts of sunshine breaking through the trees helps create a sense of calm on a winter walk. So, I mean, just reading that is calming, right? So they're selling the experience, but they're not talking at all about the parks. Okay. So old school marketing underestimates the benefits of your subject matter expertise, right? And it's important for you to shift to becoming a subject matter expert in your consumers' world, and also the benefits you're providing to them. So you want to go beyond the products and services. You want to speak to your values. You want to educate and create context. context is really important, right? For anything, it's not enough to talk about your business. You need to really talk about other businesses in your space, how you and your relationship to them. That's what really positions you as an expert, right? You can't be an expert like siloed on your own little island, right? You want to keep consumers up to date on industry trends, and that becomes a value add, right? Because you're helping consumers stay on top of things that they don't have time to stay on top of. You want to curate and clarify information. A lot of times, if your industry is complex, right, you can be the leader in identifying what's important to know. The new ways of marketing are easy to share. A lot of times people will say, why don't you refer me? Old school marketing is like, just refer me, and they expect me to do the work. New school marketing is you're sending your unique selling proposition or your unique value proposition in a bite-sized bundle that's very easy to share. So I'll say, oh, I'll show you an infographic. Oh, I'll send you a brochure, right? You're not expecting someone to kind of craft your messaging for you. And with the new ways of marketing, all of this entire approach helps you get found through organic search, right? Because if I'm a subject matter, and I'll take Haven as an example, if I'm a subject matter on workplace productivity, there's a lot of people searching for that. I might not be searching for office space, but if I'm an expert on workplace productivity or career productivity or business owner productivity, a lot of people are searching for that, right? So your brand is going to grow exponentially. So I'm going to give a few more examples just to bring some of these challenges to life. Okay. So, and the first one is really my real estate business, right? When I first started real estate, there's a lot of sales training. It's like endless sales training. And part of the sales training is using digital marketing, right? And cold calling and spending exorbitant amounts of money on, lead generation services, right? For realtors. And I realized early on that my expenses were pretty high when I was relying on that type of marketing. So I decided to really look at, and this is what I encourage all my, look at really where are my best referrals coming from and my best leads coming from, and they were coming from referrals, right? So then I looked at, okay, what is it, who's referring me, why are they referring me? And my opportunity was to switch to a more referral-based marketing, invest in what I know works, and implement a more thorough onboarding process and consumer education process to drive referrals. So early on, I spent thousands of dollars getting training in real estate financial analysis and performers to stand out from other agents. And then I completely transformed the onboarding process that I had with my clients so that that would drive referrals and loyalty. It worked magically, right? I've not spent a dime on digital marketing or pay-per-click or Zillow. Whenever you look at a real estate website and you see listings and you click, those realtors are paying for every single click and every it's ridiculous. So I love the fact that I have like real world experience in how to build a locally driven business, and referral marketing is really a real area of expertise. What that type of marketing also did for me was expand the services I could provide, right? So instead of just working with home buyers and home sellers, that subject matter expertise exposed me to investors and commercial. So now I do commercial and residential and have a much bigger, more profitable business. So what is the insight? That my operations activities were actually better drivers and differentiators in the market, right? Than traditional lead gen activities. Okay, so Haven is an example, right? Haven wants sustainable growth, and a lot of their marketing is focused on memberships. Right? Memberships, office space, right? So Haven has an opportunity to become a subject matter expert, right? In productivity, right? Or become a subject matter expert in education for small businesses, right? So, and they're doing that a little bit with their programming, right? But the opportunity is to kind of start shifting, or at least incorporating the messaging that says, we increase your productivity, support, and visibility, right? Visibility is a huge thing for your business and career, as opposed to we have excellent, well-designed office space, right? So both messages are relevant. So there's an opportunity to kind of exploit the consumer-focused messaging. So this is an example of a recent theater company I worked with. So they were growing stagnant. Their challenge was they had a lot of older patrons, right? And they were kind of just slowly winding down in terms of their entertainment, and it was difficult to attract a younger audience. So they were just stuck. We're marketing our plays, right? And nothing's happening. And so, well, why don't we shift and try marketing your operations? Because when I went in, I realized that their operations were clear differentiator. They write their own musicals. Sometimes they incorporate local activity into the dialogue of their plays. They have a woman who designs all of their own costumes in-house, right? So I'm looking at all of this expertise and I'm like, can't we leverage that just to get people into the space? And they're also kind of in a strange location. So it's like, first thing you need to do is just build visibility of your team, their skills, and their environment, right? The locality where they're in to become a go-to destination spot. So they're working on that now to kind of leverage their operations to do marketing. And then they also are starting to leverage their community, right? As well. They have a very close-knit community. So what can we do to show people the community? When you go on the website, they have a really close-knit community where they all get together after the show, before the show, but that's not on the website. The website only has the shows, right? So sometimes you want to show the life of your community as, a marketing tool. And this was another organization I consulted for a couple of years ago, a foreign affairs nonprofit organization. So again, like many businesses that have been around for a while, they never really got to growth phase. They were kind of in startup phase for a very long time, but their boards were kind of aging out, and their membership was declining. So with this company, we realized that their major asset was the fact that they had so much expertise on their boards, right? So their membership wasn't growing, but the boards had hundreds and hundreds of years collectively of global international management leadership expertise. So they had the opportunity to shift from marketing the product to marketing the board and the community of experts, right? And then we thought, okay, how do we get people excited about this kind of niche expertise? And they're working right now to create a panel discussion on board service for young professionals and people in career transition who are interested in global careers. So the angle there would be, there might be, many people in Fairfield County that are interested in global careers, but they wouldn't necessarily sign up for one of their speaking events, right? So we'll attract them by attracting them to the expertise of the board, and also by helping people understand the value of board service, right? If they're looking for new career opportunities. So again, these are just examples of people kind of being stuck, and then finding innovative ways to shift them to new ways of marketing. So this is a property management company. Some of these business service companies and consumer service companies, you look at them and they're a dime a dozen. It's very competitive, right? It's hard to differentiate. So with this company, there was the opportunity to market their operations, right? To sell the process as much as the service. So when I first started working with them, they didn't really have much of an onboarding process for clients. They would just kind of perform services, and now they're building a different onboarding strategy. And this company is also looking at referral partners, because they started to do referral marketing. So some of the takeaways for today is strategy should be an actual plan with a set of tools visible to your entire team, okay? And that's what, after I do an initial business and marketing assessment, that's the first thing I do is kind of build up your toolbox, okay? And I help everyone to understand how to use the toolbox, not just the marketing and sales people. Even the board members need to know what's in the toolbox, right? You can't expect the board member, I hear this all the time. Why isn't the board reaching out? Well, the board doesn't have the tools to reach out. The board doesn't have scripts. The board doesn't have images. The board doesn't have USPs, right? So we need to enable everyone to grow your business. And operations are not just for operations' sake, right? It's time to revisit your operations and to redesign it to help with sales. Training, well, is an art form. It does not come naturally, right? We need to start actually understanding what good training looks like. And marketing is more effective and meaningful when it is consumer focused and benefits focused. And it reflects your commitment to subject matter expertise. Now, one more note on subject matter expertise, because everyone just gets so confused with that, right? Like, I can spend all this money on content. You know what you need to do? Just pick one thing for now. Just pick one thing you're really interested in, you're really passionate about, that you're going to read about every day. And that's the thing. And you can carve out, you can do this on the weekend, 1 or 2 hours a day to just read about that thing. You'll be surprised how quickly you will become an expert on that thing. And that you can just focus on that thing for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. People will gravitate towards it. You'll build credibility and they'll want more. Okay. But you don't have to spend 3 days building a content library. I know big business can do that, but as a small business, start with that one thing. So what NRC does when we work with people, we do a complimentary marketing audit, and I break it into 4 different parts, and it's been very useful for my clients. I'd be happy to do that for anyone who needs it. And then we look at your approach, really your mindset and your perspective on marketing and how you engage your organization in it. Then we look at the actual materials. That's really your toolbox, your tool sets, all the things you use to market. Then we look at the actual activities, the plan, right? The actual schedule and your platforms that you're on. And then we look at your research, which a lot of people tend to neglect. And the audits, I deliver a lot of information in the audit. And then on the business audit, we look at the business model. What I love looking at is financial reporting. It's really hard. I have extensive training in managerial accounting. So that's a real obstacle for people to build financial reports that help manage the business, right? People are scared to look at the financials and also share financial reports regularly with their team. So that's another sabotaging habit. And I help people break out of that. It's not, I have my tricks to make that easier. And then we look at management styles, management coaching, management skill sets, that kind of thing. And then we also look at operations of your systems and processes, where information is held and kept and what processes are in place. And then the final thing that has been really helpful to my clients is this 8 steps to marketing transformation. And what we do here, it's a done with you approach. So unlike other consultants, again, will come in, tell you what's wrong, but then you have to do it on your own. We really want to coach you through it. So it's a done with you approach to bring you through the 8 steps. And what we do is we project manage each steps. And then we also give you access to our team, right? So our graphic designers, our writers, our developers, our salespeople. So you can just plug in with them. And if you have your own in-house team that does those things, that's fine. We will create the strategy and kind of hand it over. But during that kind of training process, you have an expert, right? That you can rely on to get you through the initial phase of transition. Because each one of these steps is a project, right? That has to be managed. But the good thing about it is once the strategy is in place for each of these steps, then you don't need us anymore, right? And you can fly on your own and feel confident that you're positioned for growth.